The nutrition bar was stale. Nora had known it would be stale before she even opened it. Everything in the academy vending units was stale. She ate it anyway, standing against the wall of the main corridor, datapad in her other hand, reading a chapter on Vorkai military history that Professor Ilwin had assigned 3 days ago. Around her, the corridor was louder than usual. Students moved in tight clusters, talking fast and low. A Suvari cadet with 4 green arms brushed past her, nearly knocking the datapad out of her grip. He did not apologize. He was too busy whispering to his companion about the guest lecturer arriving today. Nora had read about the guest lecturer too. She turned a page. General Draxus of the Vorkai Empire, decorated in 9 separate military campaigns. Author of the Vorkai ground doctrine that had not changed in 40 years because nothing had beaten it yet. Responsible for ending the Kisari border conflict in 11 days when the Galactic Union had predicted it would take 2 years, she finished the stale bar and folded the wrapper into her jacket pocket. Down the corridor, something changed. The noise did not stop exactly, but it thinned. Like air before a storm, students began moving to the sides of the hallway without anyone telling them to. Nora noticed it the way she noticed most things, quietly and without reacting. She glanced up from her datapad. The general was enormous. That was the first word that came to her. Not dangerous, not impressive, not terrifying, just enormous. 7 feet of hardened gray plate covering a body that looked like it had been built in a factory rather than born. His neck was as wide as her chest. The armored escorts behind him were large by most standards, and they looked small next to him. His eyes were amber, narrow, set under a heavy brow ridge. He walked like the hallway belonged to him, which for the next few hours, it probably did. Everyone moved. Everyone stepped back, pressed against walls, looked at their feet, or looked straight ahead with very careful expressions. Nora was reading about the Kisari conflict. She did not move in time. Not because she was making a point. Not because she was brave in that loud, chest-forward way. She simply did not notice him until he was close enough that stepping aside would have required her to step backward. And stepping backward felt awkward, so she stepped to the right instead, 1 step, and looked up. Draxus had stopped it. He looked at her the way a mountain might look at a pebble. Not with anger. Not yet. More like the faint interest of something large that had noticed something small moving when it was not supposed to move. Nora met his eyes. She did not smile. She did not look away. She simply waited, the way she waited for cave-ins to finish back home, patient and still. That he said nothing. That he looked at her for 3 long seconds. Then he looked at the datapad in her hand. Then he walked past her. His escorts followed. One of them gave her a look that was part warning and part something harder to name. The corridor noise came back, but quieter now. Rovan appeared at her side. Rovan was Suvari, her closest friend at the academy, his 4 arms folded in the way they folded when he was worried. His broad, leaf-textured face was tight. "You did not move," he said. "I moved," Nora said. 1 step. "Nora, I was reading." She showed him the datapad. "Kesari conflict. It is on the exam." Rovan made a sound that had no human equivalent. It meant something between disbelief and exhaustion. He had made it often in the 14 months since Nora arrived at the academy on her merit scholarship. The only human in their intake group. The only one who had come from a deep rock mining colony where the air recyclers broke twice a year, and you either fixing yourself or you did not breathe. "He is General Draxus," Rovan said, as though the name would land differently the second time. "I know who he is," Nora said. "I just told you I'm reading about him. Then you know what the Vorkai are. Warrior culture. Dueling tradition. Strength determines rank, status, and the right to hold an opinion in public." She started walking toward the lecture hall. "I read the chapter." Rovan fell in a step beside her, 3 of his 4 arms still folded. Reading about them and being in the same room as one of them are different things. Probably, Nora agreed. The lecture hall was a tiered space, seats rising in curves from a flat floor where the lecturer stood. It held around 80 students. By the time Nora and Rovan arrived, it was nearly full, every seat taken by cadets from at least a dozen species. Suvari, Drenith, the Lori, 2 Kel in the back row, and 1 Vorkai junior officer standing at the side wall like a statue. Professor Ilwin was at the front, and even from the back of the room, Nora could see the tension in his pale blue shoulders. She found a seat in the fourth row. Not the front, not the back. Rovan sat beside her and gripped the edge of his desk with two hands. Draxus walked in. The room did what the corridor had done. It compressed itself, got smaller and quieter without anyone deciding to make it smaller and quieter. Even the air felt different, the way air felt in a low tunnel underground, like there was less of it than before. Draxus stood at the front of the room and looked at them all for a long moment. Then he began to speak. His voice was low, even, and carried without effort. Nora opened her notebook. The first thing Draxus said was that the Galactic Union was soft, that he did not say it with contempt exactly. He said it the way someone states a fact about weather. The Union had been built on compromise and shared resource agreements, and the idea that every species had something worth protecting. All of that was true, but truth, Draxus said, did not make something strong. The Vorkai had been at war 11 times in the last 300 years. They had won all 11, not because of technology, which they shared with the rest of the galaxy, not because of population, which was smaller than many member species, because they understood one thing that others did not. Strength was not a gift. It was a discipline. He walked the front of the room slowly as he spoke, his footsteps heavy enough to feel through the floor. Students watched him with the focused attention of people who were being very careful not to do anything wrong. Nora wrote notes. Draxus stopped walking. He looked at the room. "I have a question for this class," he said. "What is the greatest weakness of the Galactic Union military?" Silence. Then a Drenith cadet in the second row offered that resource distribution was uneven across member fleets. A Delori student said communication lag between species made coordinated response difficult. Akel at the back said political decision-making was too slow for active conflict. Draxus listened to each answer without expression. He did not say they were wrong. He did not say they were right. "Anyone else?" he said. It was not quite a question. Nora's hand went up. She felt Rovan go very still beside her. Draxus looked at her. His amber eyes had that same quality from the corridor. Faint, patient attention. "Speak," he said. "Overconfidence in physical superiority," Nora said. The room was very quiet. "Explain," Draxus said. "Several member species with high physical capability have repeatedly underestimated opponents with lower physical capability but higher adaptability. The loss record supports it. Not always, but often enough to be a pattern." Draxus tilted his head by a fraction. "You are suggesting that strength becomes a weakness." "I am suggesting that assuming strength is enough becomes a weakness." "Yes." Someone in the back row made a very small sound. A Suvari cadet 2 seats to Nora's left was staring at her like she had just put her hand into something dangerous. Draxus walked toward her row. He stopped about 4 steps away. "What species are you?" "Human." A pause. Not long, but present. "Human," he repeated. "From Earth." "From a colony," Nora said. "Same species." Draxus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Humanity has survived in this galaxy largely through alliances with more capable species and fortunate positioning away from active conflict zones. This is not my opinion. This is recorded history. Some of it is," Nora said. "Not all of it. You are disputing the record. I am saying the record is incomplete." The temperature in the room had changed. Professor Ilwin, at the side of the lecture hall, looked like he was considering whether he could interrupt and whether the cost of interrupting was worth it. He stayed still. Draxus studied her. His expression had not changed, but something behind it had. "You speak with confidence for someone of your size and species." "I speak with the same confidence I would speak with regardless of size or species," Nora said. "The information is either correct or it is not. My size does not change that." Silence again. Then Draxus said, "In the Vorkai tradition, when a junior speaker challenges the stated position of a senior military figure in open forum, it is considered a formal challenge to that figure standing." Nora looked at him. "I am aware," he continued, "that this tradition is not the custom of your people. But you are in a room under Vorkai guest lecture protocol, and you have, by the standards of my culture, challenged my honor with your words." He paused. "I'm therefore formally calling for a duel. Combat ring." Academy grounds. Tomorrow at the second hour. No one in the room moved. Professor Ilwin made a sound like a door hinge that needed oil. He stepped forward. General, the Academy has specific policies regarding the cadet accepted open-floor discourse, Draxus said, without looking at Ilwin. She did so knowingly. She can decline the duel and concede the argument formally. That is also acceptable under our tradition. He looked at Nora. Or she can accept. Rovan had 4 hands. All 4 of them were now gripping the desk. Nora looked at Draxus for a long moment. She thought about the corridor and the stale nutrition bar, and the 11 wars the Vorkai had won, and the mining colony where she had grown up, and the time the East Shaft flooded, and her father had carried 2 people out on his shoulders in the dark. She nodded once. I accept, she said. The room exhaled. Draxus looked at her for one more second. Then he turned back to the front of the hall and continued the lecture as if nothing had happened. Nora opened her notebook to a new page. She had a lot to write down. By the time the lecture ended, the news had already spread to every floor of the station. Nora found this out when she tried to get lunch, and 3 separate cadets she had never spoken to before stopped to stare at her in the cafeteria line. A Drenith student she vaguely recognized from her physics module dropped his tray. Not because of her, but because he was watching her instead of his hands. She collected her food and found a corner table. Rovan arrived 2 minutes later, sat across from her, and put all 4 elbows on the table, which was a Suvari posture that meant he was done pretending to be calm. Tell me, he said, that you have a plan. I have the beginning of a plan, Norris said. What is the beginning? Find out everything about how he fights. Rovan stared at her. Nora, he is a Vorkai general. He has fought in 9 campaigns. He has killed in 4 recorded duels, and those are the ones on public record. I know, she said, which is useful. That means there is footage. Rovan made the sound again. The one that meant exhaustion mixed with disbelief. She ate her lunch. The food here was better than the nutrition bars. She had learned early on to appreciate that. You can still withdraw, Rovan said. Under Academy neutrality policy, any duel called during a guest lecture can be declined within 12 hours without formal consequence. Ilwin told me after class. He wanted me to tell you. That is kind of him, Norris said. He also said, and I am using his exact words, please make her see reason. What happens to the next human cadet who talks back in a lecture if I withdraw? Rovan opened his mouth. Closed it. What happens to the one after that, Norris said. Or the 10 after that. Or the 20. She looked at him. I'm not the first human in this academy, Rovan. But I'm the first one in 3 years because the ones before me left. I looked it up. Rovan was quiet. I am not saying I will win, she said. I am saying withdrawing is not the right move. There is a difference. She finished her food. She left the tray on the table, picked up her data pad, and went to find Commandant Seville de Seville's office was on the upper administrative level, past 2 security checkpoints and a long corridor with windows that looked out at the gas giant below the station. The planet was amber and slow-moving, streaked with deep red storms. Nora had found it calming the first few weeks. Something that large and that indifferent to everything around it. The Commandant was behind her desk when Nora entered. Seville was Drenith, tall and sharp-boned, with deep brown skin and eyes that had the quality of someone who had heard every possible excuse and had simply stopped being surprised by them. She looked at Nora for a moment before speaking. I was expecting you earlier, Seville said. I had lunch first, Nora said. Seville almost smiled. Almost. Seat. Nora's Saturday. I can invoke the Academy Neutrality Clause, Seville said. Cancel the duel entirely. No consequence to you or to Draxus officially. He would not be happy, but he would accept it. I know, Nora said. I'm not asking you to. Seville studied her. Then what are you asking? Everything you have on Draxus. His duel records. His fighting patterns. Any injury reports. Any medical data that is not sealed. Any footage from the campaigns where he fought in direct combat. A pause. You are not trying to survive the duel, Seville said slowly. You are trying to study it. I cannot beat him by strength, Norris said. I have known that since yesterday. But there are other ways to not lose. There are also many ways to be seriously hurt, Seville said. Yes, Nora agreed. Another pause. Seville looked at her for a long moment, then reached to her terminal. She entered a code. A file transfer notification appeared on Nora's datapad. That is everything non-sealed, Seville said. 11 dual recordings, 6 campaign field reports, 2 medical clearance summaries from the Vorkai military that were filed with the Union as part of his visiting lecturer clearance. Nora looked down at her datapad. The files were large. One more thing, Seville said. She leaned forward slightly. Draxus is not cruel. He is not coming to your duel tomorrow hoping to hurt a young human cadet. He is coming because his culture gives him no other option once a challenge has been accepted. He will fight you the way he fights everyone. I know, Nora said. That is what I am telling you, Seville said. He will fight you the way he fights everyone. Without adjustment. Without holding back. Do you understand what that means for a human body? Nora was quiet for a moment. Yes, she said. Good. Seville sat back. Then go and study. Nora stood, tucked her datapad under her arm, and walked to the door. She stopped just before it. Outside the window at the far end of the corridor, the gas giant turned slowly, its storms enormous and silent, and completely unconcerned with anything on the small station above it. She went back to her room. She did not sleep until very late. But she read every file twice, and by the time she put the datapad down, she had found what she was looking for. The combat ring smelled like stone and recycled AIR.IT was built into the lower level of the Academy's physical training block, an open circle about 20 meters across with a low barrier wall and observation balconies rising above it on 3 sides. The floor was flat, gray material that absorbed impact and returned it in smaller amounts. It had been designed with large alien combatants in mind. To Nora, walking in, it felt like standing at the bottom of a dry well. The balconies were full. That surprised her. She had expected some students. She had not expected every visible level to be packed, cadets leaning over the railings, standing in rows 4 deep, the kind of crowd that usually gathered for formal championship events. Word had moved fast and far. She could see Rovan in the second balcony, all 4 hands gripping the railing, his leaf-textured face impossible to read from here. She could also see Commandant Seville, standing at the highest balcony level, still and watchful, arms behind her back. An official from the Academy administration read the duel terms from a small platform beside the ring. No weapons. No outside interference. The duel ends when one participant submits vocally or is unable to rise. Standard Vorkai rules adopted into Academy guest event protocol. Draxus entered from the far side. Even across 20 meters of ring floor, he looked like something that should not exist in an enclosed space. He wore no armor for this, just the natural plate of his body, which was armor enough. He walked to the center of the ring and stood there with the patience of something that had been waiting a long time and had learned not to mind that he looked at her once. His face said nothing. Nora walked to her side of the center line. She had worn her standard training clothes. Light, close to the body, nothing that could catch. She had tied her hair back the night before and slept on it so it would stay flat. Small things. The kind of things that mattered in tight spaces. The official announced the start. Draxus moved immediately. She had watched his footage 11 times. She knew this. She knew the way the first strike came low and right. Not a punch exactly, more like a sweeping drive with the shoulder, the kind of thing that hit like a wall rather than a fist. She had watched him use it to end 3 of his 4 recorded duels in the first exchange. She did not try to dodge backward. Backward gave him reach. She went inside that IT was the only thing she had found in all 11 recordings. The one position where his size worked against him rather than for him. Close to his body, tight against his left side, inside the arc of the shoulder drive, where he could not generate the force. She felt the impact anyway, the edge of it like a heavy door closing against her shoulder, and she tucked and stayed close, not fighting him, just staying inside the distance that he recalibrated. She had timed it at 1.4 seconds across 7 different examples. She moved back before the second strike. The crowd on the balconies was completely silent. The second sequence came harder. He had adjusted. She could feel the difference in the air before it landed. This one she could not get inside cleanly, and the strike caught her across the back as she turned, heavy and flat, and she stumbled 2 steps before she caught herself and turned back to face him. Her shoulder ached. Her back felt like it had been hit with a plank. She breathed. She kept her feet. The third sequence was faster. She was not ready for how fast. He had been measuring her in the first two. She understood that now. And the third came before she had fully reset. It caught her on the side, high up near the ribs, and she went down on one knee hard enough that the floor fell at point one knee. Hands not on the floor. She was aware of the exact position, aware that the balconies were still silent, aware that Draxus was standing 2 steps away, looking down at her. She breathed through the pain. Her ribs protested sharply. She did not think anything was broken. Probably not. Draxus waited. He did not move forward. In Vorkai tradition, this was a pause point. She could submit from here. One word, and it was finished. She did not say the word. She pushed off the floor with her right hand, came back to standing, and turned to face him. The sound from the balconies was unlike anything she had heard in a sporting event. It was not cheering exactly. It was something lower and more complicated, a sound people make when they see something they did not expect and do not have an immediate word for. Draxus looked at her. She had seen 700 expressions in 11 recordings. His face was not a face that showed much, but something had shifted in it now, behind the amber eyes, something that had not been there in the opening seconds of the duel. That he was paying attention. Not the attention he had started with, which was the attention of something large estimating a problem. This was different. This was the attention of someone who had found something worth watching. He came at her again. The fourth sequence lasted longer than any of the previous 3 combined. Draxus was no longer trying to end it in one exchange. He moved in shorter bursts, testing angles, watching where she went each time. Nora recognized it from the footage. 2 of his campaign records had described this phase as the calibration period. When an opponent survived the opening, Draxus stopped finishing and started reading. She was being read. She let him. She had nothing to hide. Her entire approach was visible to anyone watching. Stay inside his reach when possible. Take the edge of strike rather than the full force. Do not go backward. Reset quickly. Keep breathing. There was no clever trick buried inside it. There was only the thing she had grown up doing when the shaft walls cracked and the lights went out, and the only path forward was the one directly through the thing that was trying to stop her. The 5th exchange caught her across the jaw, not the full force of it. She had turned just enough, but enough of it landed that her vision went white for half a second and her legs did something uncertain underneath her. She found the wall at the edge of the ring with her hand and held it just long enough to let her eyes clear. The crowd made a sound. She pushed off the wall and moved back toward the center of the ring. There was something happening in the balconies that she was only half aware of. She could hear it as a texture in the background. The silence from the early rounds had broken into something more alive now. She could not make out words. She did not try. She kept her eyes on Draxus, who had stopped moving when she hit the wall and was watching her come back toward the center with an expression that was hard to name. He came at her again. The 6th exchange was brutal. She had nothing left for the inside position this time. She was too slow reaching it, and he adjusted mid-strike in a way the footage had not shown her clearly, a rotation of the shoulder that changed the angle, and the strike landed clean and high, and she went down fully. Both hands on the floor. The impact was enormous. The floor absorbed most of it, but most was not all, and she lay there for a moment while the ring spun slightly around her. She heard from very far away the balconies going absolutely still again. She heard Rovan make a sound. She could not see him. She knew the sound anyway. She heard, closer, the footsteps of Draxus approaching. Heavy and slow. Not hurried. Not urgent. He stopped 2 feet away and looked down at her. His voice was flat but not unkind. "Submit," he said. The word sat in the air of the ring that Nora's hands were flat on the floor. Her ribs ached. Her jaw ached. The back of her skull had a new argument with the rest of her head. The ring was still moving slightly, though less than before. She thought about the east shaft, the one that flooded when she was 12. The water had come up fast, and the lights had gone, and 3 adults had frozen completely, just stopped, in a way that shock sometimes stops people in the dark. Her father had not frozen. He had said, in the dark, in a voice that was completely even, "We are going to move now." And he had moved, and she had followed him, and the others had followed her, and they had all come out that he had told her later that he had not known if they would make it. He had just known that not moving was the one thing that guaranteed they would not. She put her left hand against the floor and pushed, then her right. Then she was on her knees. Then she was standing. She did not do it fast. She did not make it look easy. It was not easy, and she had no interest in pretending. It was slow, and it took everything she had, and she was shaking slightly when she reached her full height and turned to face him. The sound from the balconies this time was not the complicated, quiet sound from before. This was something else. This was several hundred beings of different species, most of whom had spent their whole lives watching strength determine outcomes, making a noise that none of them had planned to make. Draxus had not moved. He was looking at her with the full and total attention he had never given anything in the 11 recordings she had watched. Not the campaigns, not the other duels, not the decorated moments in his career that were in the official record. He was looking at her the way you look at something you do not have a category for yet. She breathed. Her whole body hurt. She kept her feet flat on the floor and her hands loose at her sides, and she looked back at him. The ring was very quiet now. Neither of them moved. Draxus did not charge again, but he stood in the center of the ring and looked at her, and for the first time since the duel began, he was the one who was still. She had been still, in her careful, contained way, throughout the whole thing. Now he was still too. It was a different kind of still that he spoke. "What drives you?" he said. Not loudly. The ring carried it anyway. Nora kept her feet flat and her breathing slow. Every part of her upper body had filed a formal complaint. She addressed them all later. "What do you mean?" she said. "You have no natural armor, no physical advantage. You knew before you entered this ring that you could not win. You have been beaten 4 times in the last 10 minutes. His amber eyes did not move from her face. "And yet you stand here. What drives it?" She thought about giving him a short answer. Something clean and easy that would fill the silence and let them both move on. She decided against it. "Where I am from," she said, "there is a mining colony about 900 meters under the surface of a moon that nobody cared about until they found or deposits in it. The air recyclers break. The shafts flood. The equipment is old, and the replacement parts take months to arrive, and sometimes they arrive wrong." She paused. "People die there. Not often, but sometimes. And the ones who do not die are not the strongest ones, or the fastest ones, or the ones with the best equipment. They are the ones who, when everything goes wrong, decide that falling down is not the same as being finished." Draxus was quiet. "I did not come into this ring thinking I would win," she said. "I came in because walking away would have meant that every human who comes after me into a room like that lecture hall would be standing in a smaller space than the one I was standing in. And I was not willing to let that happen." The balconies were silent. Draxus looked at her for a long moment. Then he turned, slowly, to face the full circle of the balconies above them. He raised one arm and placed his closed fist against his chest. Then he lowered his head. That it was not a deep bow. It was not a bow of defeat. Every Vorkai in the galaxy would have known exactly what it was. The salute given not to the winner of a duel, but to the one who showed the quality that the Vorkai, above all other things, respected, the quality of refusing to break. He held it for 3 seconds. Then he straightened. "The duel is concluded," he said, loud enough for the whole room. "Honor is satisfied. No victory is claimed. No defeat is recorded." He turned back to Nora. "By the terms of my tradition, you have demonstrated a standing that cannot be taken from you. Not by me, not by anyone." He walked out of the ring. The balconies released something they had been holding the entire time. Nora stood in the middle of the ring until the sound faded. Then she walked out. Rovan was waiting outside the ring entrance, all 4 hands moving at once, which was a Suvari display of emotion that he usually kept very controlled. He did not say anything. He just looked at her and moved 2 of his hands in the Suvari gesture that meant "I see you, and you are still here." She was very tired. She found a low bench along the corridor wall and sat on it. She pulled her small first aid kit from her jacket pocket, because she had put it there before the duel, because she had known she would need it, and began cleaning a cut above her left cheekbone. Later, she heard through Rovan that Draxus had spoken to Commandant Seville before leaving the station. He had told her that his formal report to the Vorkai Military Council, which covered the state of the Galactic Union Academy's training program, would include a section on human cadets that would require significant revision. He had said, apparently without any visible emotion, that he had been operating on incomplete data. Seville had reportedly told him she was glad he had found the visit educational point 3 days later. Nora was back in the main corridor, standing against the wall with her datapad and nutrition bar. The cut on her cheek had closed into a thin line. Her ribs were taped. She was reading a chapter on Drenith structural engineering for an exam at the end of the week that a group of young cadets came through the corridor. First years, she could tell by the way they moved, that particular mix of confidence and uncertainty that everyone carried in the first few weeks before the academy either shaped it into something or wore it down into nothing. One of them noticed her. Small, nervous looking, wearing the insignia of a species she did not immediately recognize. The cadet looked at her the way young people sometimes looked at her now, since the ring, like she was something that needed to be understood. Nora looked up from her datapad. She nodded once. The cadet nodded back, then turned and walked on, shoulders a little straightener than before. Nora took a bite of the nutrition bar and went back to reading that IT was still stale. She did not mind.